for joining in on our quarterly open house here for CAAM. Joining in, we have our live Zoom webinar, LinkedIn and YouTube streams, bringing this conversation to all of you here today. Take a look at everyone that is joining. To all the returning faces, we express our gratitude to your commitment and interest to the advanced air mobility space in Canada. To our new attendees here today, simply welcome. Your journey of learning, connecting, and being a part of the future of aviation begins right here, right now. As we wanted to take just a moment to see the geographical diversity of the audience today, can everyone just pop in the chat where you're calling in from? We wanted to see some of the interest coming across our continent at the moment. Excellent, welcome. I see New York, Montreal, Toronto, welcome. Great to see everyone. Excellent, beyond appreciated. And for those of you new to our ecosystem, my name is J.R. Hammond, and I'm privileged to serve as the Executive Director for CAAM, our federal, not-for-profit, Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium. Alongside me, we have our Lead Operating Officer, Chris Howe, and our CAAM team members of Nishant and David joining us here today. Today for our open house, our goals are nice and simple. We want to inspire you, the audience, with the nearness and potential of advanced air mobility in Canada. And secondly, we want to give voice to the industry and academic experts already championing this narrative within their companies and ecosystems. We invite you to continue to register for these open houses and further your education and development on the advanced air mobility ecosystem in Canada, and welcome you to our quarterly open house for today. As always, to begin our conversations, we want to acknowledge that we're hosting this digital event on the unceded and traditional ancestral territories of the Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. We understand that our ongoing work at CAAM spans across hundreds of ancestral territories of the Indigenous peoples of Canada, the United States, and across the world. Collectively, we as settlers recognize our duty and responsibility to decolonization, reconciliation, and the equitable and inclusive use of our future air resources, which will be critical for future advanced air mobility operations. For our work at CAAM, we are bringing the future of aviation to Canada with the Advanced Air Mobility Zero-Emission Aircraft. Our definition of advanced air mobility is how do we move people, cargo, and perform services within both urban and regional areas, all with zero-emission aircraft. Here's an example of one of the electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft from one of our partners, Hyundai, who showcase how their new advanced air mobility vehicle unlocks the 3D underutilized space above our cities and regions. Secondly, we explore what new routes can be served with these quiet, emission-free aircraft. And lastly, how do we continue to decarbonize our transportation with these new electric-powered aircraft? What does that look like as a complement to our existing public transportation systems? This is what CAAM focuses on. Now, the exciting part about this advanced air mobility industry is the continued technological development in this space. Not only do we focus on the vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, but shown here, we expand to the fixed wing side as well. This is the ES-19 Heart Aerospace aircraft out of Sweden that carries upwards of 60 passengers on their fully electric aircraft. This work is done in parallel with all of the vertical takeoff and landing work, knowing that regional air mobility and urban air mobility will play a role together. Similarly, on the developments in the electric market, we also look to the technological developments coming out of the hydrogen fuel cell side. CAAM is ensuring that all of our work encompasses the developments coming out of the hydrogen fuel cell market, as seen with our partnership with Airbus, and some of the leading developments out of the United Kingdom with Zero Avia championing the hydrogen fuel cell market. This expanding profile only solidifies the importance of the sustainability narrative in aviation in Canada and how CAAM will play a leading role for the urban, regional, and long-distance opportunities in our future of aerospace. Now, for us as an industry consortium, we have brought over 55 Canadian and global aerospace mobility companies together to give life to this new industry. Our purpose is that we at CAAM exist to connect Canada and the world through zero-emission flight. This purpose is deeply rooted in our DNA, which is to be that unified national catalyst for zero-emission aviation, unlocking urban and regional air mobility. With our founding purpose established, we really look to our bold, audacious 20-year goal for the consortium of how we continue to measure our success. Simply put, we at CAAM are working to ensure that every aircraft flying under 500 kilometers will be operating with zero emissions by 2040. We are challenging ourselves, our members, and the industry with this vision as an opportunity to make generational positive impacts as a result of our actions and conversations today. This vision cannot be achieved in silo. Hence, every voice here today has a space in helping us craft this future industry together. One of those voices is our founding partners and voice from the National Research Council of Canada. Together, the NRC and CAAM showcase there is no other partnership like ours between a federal not-for-profit and the leading research and development agency of the country, together in alignment, showcasing advanced air mobility between a federal agency and our not-for-profit side. Beyond the foundation partnership that we have with the National Research Council, we know this journey in zero-emission aviation cannot be done in silo. We continue to bring the interested parties from across the globe to join our conversation and build upon the incredible work ongoing in their ecosystems and expand it nationwide here in Canada. One of the important aspects as we develop out this new industry, though, is we know these big ideas are needed to build this new industry. Bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion into the fabric of advanced air mobility is what CAAM has been focusing on through our recently launched Uplift series. These events launched initially were enormous success dating back to May of 2021 with our inaugural Women in Advanced Air Mobility event, serving as an initial part of our 3-part series, which also included our LGBTQ2+ series and our upcoming Indigenous Wisdom sessions, really striving to move the conversation forward as we build this new industry together. If our Women in Advanced Air Mobility event in May showcased anything and taught us something to begin with, it's that we need to do more listening. This is an opportunity to continue this work. So we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to register for our upcoming Indigenous Wisdom session, which is available on our website for registration. And lastly, building upon the importance of tangible revenue-generating projects here in Canada, CAAM launched our Liftoff 2021 projects, each focusing with a project outline, associated members, and a defined goal in mind to bring the advanced air mobility ecosystem to Canada. All of the links to these projects are available on our website, as well as the members associated, the project budgets, and the next steps that will be launching our 2022 strategy. Now, moving beyond CAAM, I'm extremely excited to begin our initial introductions through our 3 Fireside Chats that we've scheduled for today, bringing the industry and academic expertise of companies and leaders playing a role in the advanced air mobility ecosystem in Canada. Our first speaker, I'm happy to welcome Brandon Robinson, President of Astro Aerospace, up to the stage to join me in a conversation about the massive developments coming out of Astro Aerospace here on the Canadian side. Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time today. Welcome.
Thanks so much, JR. Thanks, Chris, and the whole team at CAAM for the invite and for this opportunity. It's fantastic. Thank you.
And specifically coming from our side, the massive developments between Astro Aerospace acquiring Horizon Aircraft has unlocked the next phase of advanced air mobility in Canada. Give us some insight of what is now possible with this acquisition.
Yeah, so it's a pretty exciting story. I mean, fundamentally, this is a really cool story about a Canadian high-tech aerospace company that came up with a cool concept. We worked really hard at it for a lot of years and got recognized by a really innovative company in Astro. And now we have the support. So from a Horizon Aircraft perspective, being acquired has really given us the opportunity and the resources to accelerate all our exciting development trajectories. So, working on our Cavorite X5 platform that we'll talk about a little bit later, building the team in Southern Ontario, which is fantastic. And I think from the reciprocal side of it, on the Astro side, we can bring our aerospace expertise, a small team, highly focused, highly skilled, to help drive some of their projects forward as well. Now our projects collectively. And I think the third thing is really exciting for everyone that wants to kind of join in. I mean, you can invest in Astro Aerospace. So a small part of the success and the journey as we kind of grow some really cool products. As to the benefits to Canada, I mean, yeah, we're already growing the team here in Southern Ontario. So bringing lots of high-tech jobs into this rural area just north of Toronto. We also have so that's Lindsay area. We also have a northern kind of Halliburton office as well. And we're growing our small technical hub in Toronto. So pretty excited about that. And honestly, just the collaborative sort of ecosystem that we're seeing develop within Canada. So partnerships with Fleming College, a bunch of really cool, technical expertise coming together in Southern Ontario. So we're pretty stoked about that as well. I think I hit all your questions there.
No, Brandon, and that's exactly it. Let's just lean in though. This entrepreneurial story, this is the headline for what we have in Canada as our leading eVTOL developer. Tell us a little bit about the story of you and your father starting up Horizon and now leaning into this entire rapidly growing advanced air mobility industry.
Yeah, so really exciting. I mean, it grew out of my father's company, Robinson Aircraft, where a lot of really high-tech products and services were being brought to the general aviation market. He's a really exceptional engineer, aircraft tinker. We've owned our airplane at home since I can remember. Our custom aircraft at home has about 50 modifications, and as electric technology, battery technology sort of progressed on that aircraft at home, we had a bunch of different modifications that were electric focused. So electric flaps, electric landing gear. And finally, when a gentleman came to us with the idea to push that a little bit further and develop an electric amphibious aircraft, we went even one step further and thought, with the right architecture, we can actually make this a vertical takeoff and landing machine that is rooted in operational versatility and really serves a really cool piece of the market. And so that's kind of the story. Father-son team initially, and now the team is growing, and we're pretty excited. Not always awesome to work with family, but I think a really strong team can come out of that because he's not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong and vice versa. And so that's a really, I think, a powerful sort of narrative that's building.
That's it. And, you continue to leverage, you talked about like the tech talent and aerospace powerhouses already in Southern Ontario. Build upon the Cavorite X5, really serving that urban air mobility market on some of the hybrid electric routes that we can have in a shorter distance. But critically, with this new expansion with Astro, how does the Elroy and Alta play into also the regional air mobility market that we know is going to be equally as important as some of those intercity or urban routes?
So great question, JR. So the first thing that you touched on initially, I just want to highlight the incredible talent that we have here in Southern Ontario and Canada writ large, to be honest. I mean, so that has been fantastic. I mean, one of our latest job postings, we had over 250 applications within a few days, and some just incredible people coming forward. So that's been really exciting. From the Cavorite X5 and regional air transport of people and cargo and some special missions, we first focused on developing an operationally useful machine. So something that's going to be versatile, that I myself would want to get in the cockpit, that would be safe, that could get us a decent distance, so up to 500 kilometers with full fuel reserves, to be able to land in austere locations, recharge itself. Right now it's hybrid electric, but of course we'll go fully electric when it batteries come a little further. And really gain access to all those really cool missions. Now, the Cavorite travels a little faster than your traditional, advanced air mobility product in the environment right now, and travels a little further. So up to 450 kilometers an hour. Now, when we talk about some useful missions, we talk about transport of, people, critically injured people with a medevac mission, transport of organs or time-sensitive sort of cargo, much faster. So about twice as fast as a helicopter, with the same ability to get in and out of tight locations, and to operate remotely. Now, it's not built for long-duration hover type missions, but with operational costs, a fraction of some of those other aircraft. There's some pretty strong business cases developing from a regional perspective. Now, as far as Alta and Elroy, so Alta, well, let's start with Elroy actually, and it first flew in 2017, 2018, fully autonomously, which is pretty cool. And that was back when Astro was just getting into it, and saw the vision and really jumped in with both feet. It's a pure electric vehicle for shorter range, and so from a hub and spoke methodology, the Cavorite could easily transport from a cargo and people from a regional over regional distances, and then you take those smaller workhorse machines, your typical air taxi type machines, and now you can go that last mile sort of distance with those smaller machines. Again, low cost, highly safe, highly versatile type machines. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. And this is just showcasing to the audience the different opportunities that come from having that market identified per aircraft, knowing those key mission and use cases that will be essential for getting this new industry off the ground.
Yeah, and I would also add too, there's when we got into the tech that Astro had been building over the years, and doing so fairly quietly from a market's perspective, we, at Horizon Aircraft, when we, got brought into the fold, we noticed some really innovative stuff going on. So, for example, it's getting a little technical, but Elroy operates on a fiber optic system. So, electromagnetic interference, it's actually a lighter system from a certain perspective as well. That technology, and that's just one piece of the technology that Astro has been developing that is broadly applicable to what we're doing at Horizon Aircraft and developing the X5 as well. So having a company that's, joining a company that's been in the game for a while with some really cool technology has, allowed us to really accelerate things quite a bit.
And let's lead into the Canadian national aspect, because that's exactly it. The importance of Southern Ontario. How has the interaction with CAAM and the national vision that we have been beneficial to the work ongoing at Astro?
Well, I'll say it again. CAAM is just a fantastic organization. It's collecting, some of the industry leading thought and getting everyone talking. It's just fantastic. So I guess from a Canadian perspective, writ large, there is, Canada's a big country, and there's a lot of diverse geography. CAAM organized a white paper, I think, a while back there, JR, with, exploring business cases on the west coast of BC, for example. Any place in Canada is filled with them, where geography gets in the way of efficient transport. So in BC, you're taking ferries and you're, driving convoluted routes in high density areas. I think the same with the Greater Toronto area. I think CAAM is driving a force to create a GTA white paper that explores business cases within the Greater Toronto area. Same thing, the lakes are getting in the way of efficient transport, increasingly congested roads, and places where advanced air mobility can really shine with some initial business cases. So these types of, again, complex transportation scenarios are ubiquitous sort of all around the world as well as Canada, and represent some huge growth potential. And opening up, again, a huge opportunity for partnerships within Canada so that we can lead the way with all the trickle-down effects of the really cool technology, high-tech jobs in the area. And of course, that leads to innovation and has all sorts of follow-on effects for the benefit of everybody. So hope that answers the question.
Completely. And talk about those follow-on effects and the importance of those partnerships. That's what we are trying to strive for, is bring the leading insight that already exists in the industry, be it aviation, the automotive side, urban planning, and really leveraging to build a more robust, inclusive, and equitable ecosystem for this new industry. So great highlights on that point.
Yeah, excellent. And, and I think the more we get together and talk practically, I know, CAAM has been fantastic with that, helping people understand. So businesses and individuals understand the power that advanced air mobility brings to the table, understanding how it's safe, how it can really help them individually and how it helps businesses individually. Sharp focus on initial use cases, which CAAM is really driving with those white papers. Again, I'll footstop those. With some great examples. And again, medevac, organ transport, if you can get, medevac, for example, if you can get somebody to the hospital half the time because the machine isn't that much faster, or within that same golden hour, you can travel twice the distance, saving lives, you just can't get much better than that. And it's fantastic to bring everyone in together that can have all of the important discussions that surround that. So we really appreciate, again, the opportunity.
That's it. And aligning those use cases is critical importance as well. So just as we come to some of the top here, Brandon, let's dive into a little bit on the certification side, because that's, we know the time frame. For the audience, what is the time frame that Astro is pushing on bringing these aircraft to market?
So, back in 2018, everyone in the world thought that the certification framework would alter a little bit faster than it has. Unsurprising for maybe a guy like myself who's operated within that regulatory framework for the majority of my fighter career. But from a certification, the plan for Astro is to really drive certification on the Cavorite X5 first. Mm-hmm. So that's the aircraft that spends 98% of its life and its mission operating exactly like a normal aircraft and looking like exactly like a normal aircraft. The wings close, and that's something that Transport Canada and the FAA, I think, appreciate the fact that those risks of, individual failures are not integrated over the entire mission in sort of a helicopter scenario where now if you have any individual rotor that goes down, it can be dangerous. And so Astro is really putting the full weight behind certification of the Cavorite. We're looking to accomplish that by the 2024-2025 timeframe. And we're en route. So we'll have that 50% scale prototype. So 20-foot wingspan, 500-pound beast will be up and flying Q1 of 2022. And a lot of the full scale development, the engineering work is already ongoing. So that's been pretty exciting.
I think that's the important part that we want to make sure the audience understands. The nearness of the work ongoing right now is going to continue to unlock those future innovations, the future development, and of course, aligning on more revenue generating use cases to bring the aircraft to market.
Exactly. Well said.
So our last favorite question here on this side, you have an incredible audience here, Brandon. What do you think the Canadian ecosystem needs? And the ask out to the audience for AAM to launch effectively and safely here in Canada?
Well, I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record, but it's exactly venues and initiatives like this, JR. So the more we can come together and have some sharp, focused discussion from industry experts in a practical manner. So, for example, we're not, one of our presuppositions shouldn't be that Transport Canada is immediately going to overhaul the regulatory frameworks. 2 years from now, there's going to be 10,000 of these, autonomous vehicles flying over downtown Toronto. We come at it with a practical approach. We get some very smart folks that are operationally focused kind of at the table, and we drive solid business cases forward. So saving people's lives, saving people's time, and making businesses more efficient and more profitable. In short.
That's it. So let's take that as the ask out to the audience. Straight from Brandon Robinson, the president of Astro Aerospace. Thank you so much, Brandon, yet again, for giving your insight and showcasing where we are and where we need to go in this industry. And of course, we'll be making sure that the audience has the opportunity to connect not only with Astro, but ensure that they follow all the progress in the very near future. So thank you again for sharing the stage with us and giving that insight, Brandon.
All right, thanks, JR. Really appreciate it. And thanks once again.
Excellent. And that is our first speaker that we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to bring some of the industry leading developers here in Canada up to share the insight. Our second conversation, I'd like to welcome Dr. Suzanne Kearns, founding director of the Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Aeronautics, or WISA, who's been championing not only the academic side, but bringing the insight from our leading universities across Canada to make the changes necessary for the future of our aviation. Dr. Kearns, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, JR. It's a pleasure. Thank you for including me.
Now let's just start off. First of all, major congratulations on the launch of WISA and all of the work gone behind Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Aeronautics being that voice and signal for Canadians around the world.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a big project, but one that I hope will have tremendous impact for a long time.
So give us some insight. WISA is now launched. How does this paint the picture for the future of aviation, and what role does WISA want to play in that narrative?
Absolutely. Well, actually, the official launch of WISA is on October 5th. So I would like to just throw it out. We will be having a virtual launch ceremony, and everybody who's on the call, we would love if you would participate and celebrate that milestone with us. And if I could talk about what I hope the impact of WISA will have, I think it's really important to talk about how it came to be and to share that I'm a person who just always loved aviation. I wanted to be a pilot. I flew airplanes and helicopters up to the commercial IFR level. And in my journey, what happened was that I had just finished my bachelor's degree and 9/11 hit. And you look around, all of my colleagues who have just graduated and nobody can get employment, and the industry ground to a halt. And I took my passion. I always loved aviation, and I thought, well, what else could I do? And that's what led me to become an academic and to follow a different journey. And I think there's a really distinct parallel here between 9/11 and my journey and what so many young people are facing now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and so many of our colleagues in the aviation sector who have had just an incredibly difficult and devastating year. And it really hit me because I remember that pain. I remember that hardship and the uncertainty of what comes next. And when the pandemic hit, I spent a lot of time thinking and understanding the difficulty everyone was facing and saying, well, I'm an academic in a university. What can I do? Like, I can't help keep the airlines alive. I can't, necessarily give people a job, in operations. But what could I do to support this sector that I care about? And I started really reflecting on, well, the reality is this downturn did create an opportunity that in a pause, there's a chance to reflect on what were those big challenges that our industry was facing before the pandemic, and how can we rethink things now while things are in sort of this sort of a slow time, so we can set ourselves up for a better future. And I had sort of thought that the widespread personnel shortages, so not having enough people in our sector, the environmental impact of aviation and the growing movement and awareness of that impact, as well as the rapid evolution of technology, were these three big challenges that I thought were targets. And what's interesting is those directly align with the three pillars of sustainability: social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability. I also started paying attention to other aviation universities, the leaders around the world, and what I was seeing is that they were recruiting in areas that Waterloo already had world-leading experts in cybersecurity and environmental science and new engineering and energy systems. And I looked around campus, and I'm the only full-time aviation academic at Waterloo, and I thought, what an amazing opportunity that we don't have to recreate everything. All we need to do is ignite that spark and mobilize the existing talent at the University of Waterloo and direct it towards these challenges. And that was what led to the Institute. That plus probably hundreds of meetings and an incredible amount of work, but that's what led it. It was approved by the University Senate in June and will officially launch in October.
And that's the beacon of hope and inspiration that has come from this, and your ability to formulate that incredible talent base that's already there and direct it to some of the massive challenges that we have, not only in advanced air mobility, but ensuring that the conventional aviation industry is a part of this change going forward. We cannot leave that in the dust. There has to be that integration piece as well.
100%. I think a sustainable future for the air transport sector, aviation, aerospace, space, certainly advanced air mobility is a critical part of that. A sustainable future is inextricably linked to scientific innovation. Like, we have to mobilize the scientific community and directly support, not just from the research perspective, but also because it trains the next generation of talent. So when you look at the future of our sector, we need these energetic young minds who are passionate and dedicated to help support and build our sector. And I can tell you, before WISA, I was increasingly seeing the young pilots that I teach come to me and say, I love aviation, but I feel so guilty because all of my friends say I'm part of the problem. And how can I align those things? How can I be both passionate about this field and also care about environmental influences and do better? And I think, what CAAM is doing is a good illustration that you can unite those things together. And what I hope WISA can do is backfill from a research and development and talent development perspective, so that in Canada we're growing both our knowledge economy as well as the sector as a whole.
Point in case, and those are definitely linked together, knowing that our work on the pull strategy of establishing those revenue generating use cases to show industry, government of what the potential is, in conjunction with that backfill, that's the only way to create that true circle effect in the ecosystem as well.
Absolutely.
So let's build upon, we share very similar pillars on that environmental, economic, and social sustainability side. How does that link into WISA's motivation and the structure of the ecosystem that WISA is progressing going forward?
Sure. Well, I can tell you, I think for most people like me who are aviation people and have always been since childhood, when you hear the word sustainability, sometimes you only think about doing less. You think, well, I'm going to be flying, so if I'm going to be producing less emissions, that means less flying or less of what I care about or am passionate about. And what I try to reinforce is that through technology, through innovations, what we should be thinking about is how we can do everything more sustainably. So it's not about villainizing aviation and it's evil and we're against it. And, the only future is one without flying. It's about what role can that play to support a sustainable future for society, and sort of taking the good parts and trying to work with everything we can to reduce the negative impacts. And I say all the time that I think aeronautics is a force for good. What we do, we can be proud of, like developing and distributing vaccines around the world, supporting millions of jobs, developing critical supplies and infrastructure to parts of the world that you can't get by road for all the different parts of the year. Like we shouldn't be ashamed for being passionate about the field that we're in, but we do need to be thoughtful and reflective about what do we do well, what are areas where we need to rethink what we're doing because it's not sustainable in the long run. And so it's all of these sort of critical reflections. But I do think, of course, I'm in a university, so this is our world, but I do think research and I think developing talent are the real critical roles that I think WISA can do to support a better future.
And what an opportunity to lean into collaborative innovation together with that insight of the reflective purpose being at the forefront. Absolutely critical.
Absolutely. And if I could mention, a lot of people have never heard of an institute at a university and like, what does that even mean? And ultimately what it does is, rather than a single department that in academic terms is usually one discipline, so maybe geography or psychology, what an institute does is it reaches out across the entire campus. So WISA has support and membership from all 6 faculties of the university. So environment, arts, math, health, science, and engineering, all of which are mobilizing different expertise towards aviation and aerospace. But we also serve as a front door. So for industry partners who are looking for research, or if they want to support the next generation of talent, then they can come and work directly with us if they have, critical challenges that need research. And I think the beautiful part about that is, in supporting research, they're also supporting young people and giving them a chance, these passionate young people to grow and learn how to do research. And then those people flow into our knowledge economy here in Canada.
So let's build upon that knowledge economy. Let's paint a picture 5, 10 years down the road. Can you walk us through that experience of a journey of that new, excited individual coming to WISA, progressing through the program, and then becoming a part of that knowledge economy? Give our audience some of that insight of what that's going to look like.
Sure. Well, I can tell you what I've been working on. The Institute is, as I said, going to launch in October. But with that, what has been really the focus of my work is to look at graduates studies, so at the master's and doctoral level, that aviation hasn't always been a discipline at that level in Canada, that in other parts of the world it is, but not in Canada. So what I've been working on, and I've had some amazing support across campus, is developing what's called a collaborative aeronautics program. And we hope that that will launch September of next year. And what that will mean was that master's or PhD students could apply and begin studies in a variety of disciplines across campus. So engineering, psychology, kinesiology, kind of everything in between, and then come together for a few aeronautics focused courses where they learn the foundations. They are given problems, and air mobility is such a great one because it's interdisciplinary. So it's not just engineering, it's also training and environment. It's all of these pieces coming together. And then they go back to their home departments and they have to have some sort of a research application that's to aeronautics, so aviation, aerospace, or space. And then when they graduate, their degree is added to with dash aeronautics. So I think it's this like amazing way we can take the entire campus of the university and really mobilize this next generation to help support our sector in the future.
And that is the vision, tangible goal of bringing those ecosystem-based approaches, not just in the aviation side, pulling on that learning across. That's going to give us that highest probability of success.
I hope so. It's exciting. And I think, like all of us, I think I work directly with young people every day who are passionate and they love our sector and they're looking for an opportunity. And they've had a tremendously difficult year, like so many of us have. And so many of them, their spirits are diminished from what they were before. They're wondering, is there a future in this sector? And they're worried about emissions. They're worried about how to even have enough of an income to survive over the longer term. So looking at them on a daily basis, I wanted to do whatever I could to say, I'm trying, like I want to help support a pathway for you into the sector that you care about, because they've got tremendous potential and we can help mobilize it.
And let's lean into those challenges. From the advanced air mobility side, we've identified some of the key ones from the air traffic control, the scope 1, 2 through scope 3 emission side, making sure these aircraft are inclusive and equitable. What do you see some of the main challenges are on the academic side with the critical work that WISE is going to be producing in these next couple of years?
Yeah, so I can give just so I live in an academic world. We use different terminology and we have different structures than sometimes in industry, but I think what's important to understand is that traditionally academics are incredibly deep in their expertise in one discipline. So when you look at these advanced air mobility problems, like I said, so if it's air traffic control, it may be spatial or mapping or geomatics, right? But there's also a person, so it's human factors and learning and human performance and human computer interaction, but it's also maintaining the security. So it's cybersecurity and computer science and engineering and kind of everything in between. And I think the challenge, if you say, well, how do we get academia to support us? We go and talk to academia and you're like, that person only understands one little piece of what we're talking about. It can't really, like, it's not aligned. And that's where we really try to lean into what we call interdisciplinarity. And that it's a really big word, but what it basically means is that real world problems aren't usually just one little thing. They're kind of multifaceted. And to have solutions, we need a team that has a variety of different backgrounds to support it. So that's the other thing we're really working on within WISA. It's challenging, I think, for people to wrap their head around outside of the university, but inside the university, it's quite novel and it's exciting because you get different people learning. So really quickly, I have a colleague who is an expert in machine learning, who's how people learn and tracking it, and whether an automated system can automatically assess performance. A vision scientist who's looking at how people move their eyes around a cockpit and extract information, and a kinesiologist who's how people learn hand-eye skills and coordination. And all of those things, you can think you need that all for one task, which is piloting, and yet they come from different disciplines. So the magic happens in these overlapping areas where different people come together.
That's it. And my favorite question, just to bring us to the top of our conversation here today, what gets you most excited on the personal level for the developments coming on WISE's work, advanced air mobility, and of course, the zero emission aspect of the future of aviation?
I think, like I said earlier, for me, it's the students, it's the young people. Like, it's looking at the next generation and saying we're doing what we can to support a sector that is going to be prosperous and give them opportunities, and also in a way that it's sustainable for broader society, so they can go on and say, I'm proud to be a part of aviation.
There we go. The proudness to be a part of the aviation. Let's take that as our theme statement. Dr. Kearns, as always, such a pleasure to speak to you. And we look forward to that launch coming up in October time.
Yeah,
and we'll make sure that we share around the contact information to reach out to WISA and be a part of the incredible progress happening here in Canada. Thank you
so
again
much.
for your time today.
Thank you.
Excellent. And that brings some of the insight from the leading academic institutions that we have here in Canada, building, as Dr. Kearns said, upon the talent base, providing that strategic insight on those pillars and really contributing to the future of our knowledge economy here in the Canadian aerospace ecosystem. Our last speaker that I wanted to invite up to the stage, this is transitioning the conversation to our infrastructure piece. Myron Keane is the Vice President of Air Service and Business Development for Edmonton International Airport, really leading the conversation on how we are smashing aviation, sustainability, and the future of technology together. Myron, welcome to the stage. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jar. My pleasure to join such an esteemed panel, and thank you again for the leadership of CAAM.
And let's just start off. Edmonton International Airport, EIA, taking the lead on sustainability. Give us some insight of what the developments are and some of the innovation work that's already ongoing.
Sure, absolutely. And again, privileged to be here today. I'd like to start off by saying thank you for doing a land acknowledgement to recognize where we as Canadians all sit on the land within Canada that we call Canada today. From an airport perspective, Edmonton International Airport really embeds sustainability, ESG principles, as well as innovation into our entire ecosystem. And we're developing, with the direction of our board and our management team, what we coin an airport city sustainability campus. And we really believe that the decarbonization of aviation is a critical goal for us. And you've heard earlier our speakers, Brandon and Dr. Kearns, speak about the vital importance of doing that and the great strides that have been made to do that. So from an airport perspective, we really see our role as to lead and drive and create the ecosystem that companies can participate in and help drive a systemic change.
That's it. And, this is where we play in conjunction with our work at CAAM, knowing that we have to have champions in the airports themselves to leverage existing infrastructure to help guide, strategize, and invite our existing and future operators into that new future of aviation.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think, as Dr. Kearns just mentioned about the next generation, we're not building what we're doing here at the airport, or any of us are doing for today. We're building it for tomorrow, for our kids and their kids after that. And so it's really, how do we leave the world a better place than we found it? And I'm going to use a little prop for a second, but this, if you look back at Star Trek, does everything other than teleport us that's on Star Trek. I mean, science fiction becomes science fact. So I think the people understand the nearness of this. This isn't a pipe dream. This isn't something that people are thinking about in 20 years they're going to see. It's advancing very, very quickly. And we're at that critical tipping point in our perspective from the airport, that if you're not planning for it, accommodating and driving this innovative change, and utilizing your airport and your area as a living lab, you're going to get left behind, because the world is evolving so quickly.
And let's talk about one of those commitments on the nearness that EIA has put out, building the world's largest solar farm on airport ground. Give us some insight of what the conversations behind that was and how that's going to play a role in the future of EIA.
Sure, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned earlier, our board and our management team are very progressive in their environmental, social, and governance thinking under ESG, and really the pillars as Dr. Kearns mentioned. So for us, we were looking at how do we utilize the land mass space that we have and been blessed with to help drive systemic change in aviation. So from an airport perspective, we were able to partner with a company out of Europe called Alta and Elroy, and we'll be developing the world's largest solar farm at an airport, which will start construction next year, finish in 2023. It's a 120 megawatt solar farm. It'll produce 200,000 megawatt hours a year. It's about 107,000 tons of carbon a year out of the atmosphere, equivalent of powering about 27 to 30,000 homes. And why we thought that was important is to show that leadership, not just from what we're doing in things like cogeneration and recycling and grease reuse into biofuels and all the many things that every airport does, but to really take ourselves off the grid where we can and drive change and create the ecosystem. As I mentioned earlier, we're using this airport city sustainability campus ecosystem. We're now working and attracting businesses that want to take green power to either produce hydrogen or to create electric vehicles or create solar panel products or plastic replacements out of plants. So there's plant fiber. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's really about creating that ecosystem that allows incidental collisions, which we don't usually use that word in aviation, but allow companies to work together that never thought they'd work together before.
Mm-hmm. And let's build upon those companies coming together, because that's where EIA is a leading nationwide on, is creating that innovation center, allowing those companies to come together. You look at the existing partnerships with operators, which are the blood and life source of the airport, Air Canada, WestJet. How is that partnership, Myron, critical for the future of drone operations, advanced air mobility operations, and the next connectivity of cargo and people from EIA?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Jer. I think it's really critical, we believe, on an airport perspective, and I'm speaking not just for myself, but on behalf of all my colleagues, because it's a whole team and a whole village here of people looking to change and drive aviation and innovate. We are really working collectively across different sectors, whether it be passenger, cargo, drones, and all the things in between, autonomous systems. So we, as an organization, we have 5 incubators here at the airport. One of them is Alberta Aerospace Technology Center, which is about decarbonizing aviation in different sectors. It includes everything from flight training and drones to plastic replacements out of plant fiber, and even a really great Indigenous company that just come on board that we're going to announce in the next coming weeks, hopefully, at the airport. Elevate Aviation, a great organization, was started by someone from NAV Canada, and that helps women and Indigenous get into aviation. And we talked about, Dr. Kearns mentioned earlier, about needing to have everyone involved and making sure we bring everyone along as we create this new world. I think what we, from an airport perspective, are looking at is how do we bring together different companies, whether it be companies in the autonomous system space, whether it's drones like Drone Delivery Canada, which is a great partner, doing automated drone delivery out of Edmonton, or people doing runway inspections, reinventing or recreating the things that are typically done in a different manner to utilize electric vehicles. So it's whether it's a drone or a VTOL drone to drive that change. So what's been instrumental for us is the great partnerships with government. I mean, there's kind of a bunch of legs on that stool, but government and academia are really important partners. Industry is one important part of the ecosystem, but you need government and the regulators to come along. And I think we've been very blessed in Canada to have both NAV Canada being so progressive in their thinking and Transport Canada to help drive some of these things forward. They don't always go at the speed we want, but realistically, Canada's in large way leading in some of these spaces. So what we believe our role is to create the ecosystem and have companies be able to come together, and companies that would not normally work together. So I'll use an example where we partner with a company that has what's called Robird. It's a falcon bird to do wildlife control. That introduced us to a forestry company doing nature-based solutions for carbon capture. And those kind of things you wouldn't think, how did those go together? But it's just those partnerships drive other partnerships, and just conversations today like you're holding, JR, and the entire CAAM team. Congratulations to you and Dr. Kearns and to Brandon, bring together people saying, hey, we're all willing to work together. Let's sit down and figure out what we should do together.
And let's build upon this partnership side, because we know having one airport as a departure and arrival point does not create the ecosystem or the network for moving people, goods, and services across the country. EIA has taken a lead role, Mime, with your efforts on connecting here in Vancouver with YVR, looking at Calgary, looking at other airports around the country. What is that like in creating that network for the future of our aviation industry?
I think it's vital. As you said, most people don't leave an airport to come back to that same airport on the same trip, typically, unless you're doing flight training, then you do a lot of that. But for people who prefer to fly somewhere, and goods prefer to move. So I think it's incumbent upon industry, through great partnerships like we've done with Air Canada and our sustainability partnership to decarbonize aviation, or our partnership with Amazon to agree to be carbon neutral, or actually net zero by 2040 from a carbon perspective for what the airport does. Airport Authority does. I think it's important that we as industry work together and create that ecosystem of like-minded partners to drive change. So an example would be, again, I'll use Robird. Coming into Edmonton Airport and actually doing everything in Canada was the first place, but we're not the only airport they fly in. We're not the only place to do business. So it's creating that ecosystem and working through what could be perceived as challenges, but the hurdles or the steps to make sure regulators and organizations are embracing these technologies and using it safely, because that's the number one priority, safety and security, of course, at the airport. I think we really collectively can all together rise. Rising tide rises all boats, or the wind lifts all planes, whichever way you want to use that acronym.
That's it.
I have an acronym, I apologize, but analogy.
No, and that's it. And so looking forward, what role do airports need to play in the future of aviation, especially when we look at advanced air mobility?
Well, we believe in what we're doing in Edmonton, and we're seeing this in other places, in Vancouver, Calgary, other airports as well, in actually being inviting of using your airport as a living lab. And, you know, we're really embraced that in everything from hydrogen to electric vehicles to autonomous systems doing security patrols, the whole 9 yards, drones, whatever they may be. We really believe that the organizations collectively need to work together to solve problems. And we have airports all face a common issues. There's common opportunities. And so when we're working with companies, whether it be like, you know, somebody like talking to Brandon's company, for example, or groups that are coming through Dr. Kearns, it's really about how do we create the ecosystem to drive that? And it really works through conversations such as this. So again, I really applaud CAAM to have this national presence, national conversation. And out of aviation, one of the things that really attracts me to aviation, there's so many inventions that come out of aviation. People just don't realize they came out of aviation because in the past it's been military or government driven. But if you look at the transition of aviation and space to the commercial industry, to private business, and what's that driving? Within our lifetime, we're seeing systemic change in how our industry advances and develops. And I think it's a complete sea change in going back over time.
That's it. Continued development being applied beyond just our aviation side. And that's where we see AAM playing a major role as well. What are the societal, economic, and environmental impacts that this new industry will start unlocking for Canada? And on the national side, let's bring in the regulators. We have Transport Canada and NAV Canada. As the leading airport pushing on this innovation side, Myron, what is your ask to our regulators and our audience members here to help the advanced air mobility industry become that safe, equitable, and inclusive ecosystem of the future?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I will say from our perspective, both NAV Canada and Transport Canada have been phenomenal to work with. Mm-hmm. Really good. And I mean, literally from the first time of talking about flying a drone in restricted airspace to being able to fly that was, you know, a little over a year and a bit. But that transitioned very quickly. But it took everyone to come to the table to understand each other's perspectives, where the concerns will be. And again, of course, keeping in mind your number one and all of our number one priorities is safety and security. And so I think collectively, I think we as an industry don't need to be scared about talking to the regulator, involving the regulators earlier, involving NAV Canada and Transport. They're very progressive. And if I use NAV Canada as an example, they're seen globally as a leader in what they're doing all around the world. And we don't know that as Canadians. So I think we've got a really great airspace management organization in Canada, and Transport Canada as well has some very forward-looking individuals that are really interested in how do we create that new economy. And as Dr. Kearns said, this whole innovation ecosystem drives a phenomenal job creation, phenomenal downstream job creation, and also businesses. I mean, what will come out of this in 5, 10, 15 years, people will look back and go, how did that happen? And it's organizations like CAAM that are helping drive that change.
Driving the contribution to the knowledge economy as well. That's the important piece. And you know, Myron, as we come to the top here, of course, my favorite question, what gets you the most excited about what's coming down the pipeline in terms of advanced air mobility for your personal side?
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to look forward to being able to fly in a eVTOL drone or a hydrogen drone and be able to go off to a meeting somewhere and come back into an airport. I mean, the connectivity that this is going to provide to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, particularly on short haul areas, and create not just for passengers, but cargo. The movement of goods into northern communities to help Indigenous communities, the movement of life-saving materials, as Brandon spoke about. If we think about all things that move today by airplane, whether it be medical supplies or organs or blood and all the different things, plasma, et cetera, and that is just going to systemically change how we look at everything from healthcare to how we travel to how goods move. It really is a sea change. And I think those companies like Drone Delivery Canada, we talked about earlier, I briefly mentioned, are really spending time in this space, and Brandon's company and what Dr. Kearns is doing really changes our value proposition. So I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Kearns. It's incumbent on us to drive that systemic change. And aviation isn't a bad thing. It's a very positive thing. It's opened up the world to us. How do we do that in a more sustainable way and make it more inclusive is what's critical for all of us.
Yeah, and I think this is a perfect example of having incredible minds like yours and our other speakers of Brandon and Dr. Kearns as well, showcasing that this is happening in so many different areas already. Let's bring those minds together and really create the ecosystem for the future.
No, I appreciate that, Jer. I'm honored to be on the same panel as Brandon and Dr. Kearns. I'm not in the same academic level as either of them, but I'm not a pilot. I love everything about it. Aviation gets in your blood, and this industry, aviation, it's aerospace and space getting in your blood, and it's very, very exciting because it's always evolving and changing. And if you like change, for anybody that's on the listening today or is going to listen online and like to have an industry that is going to evolve and you can really make a mark and help impact humanity, this is one of those industries.
Excellent. Myron, from all of us, thank you again for your time, giving that insight from one of our leading airports here in Canada, Edmonton International Airport. We'll make sure the entire audience has the opportunity to follow, keep track of all the developments, and of course, the exciting news releases coming soon from the airport.
Excellent. Thank you, JR, and the whole CAAM team.
Greatly appreciated, Myron. Excellent. Now, as we wrap up, I wanted to bring the importance of not only having Brandon Robinson from Astro Aerospace giving that manufacturing insight from here in Canada, Dr. Suzanne Kearns from WISA bringing that academic and that knowledge economy aspect, and lastly, our airport infrastructure partners of Myron Keane. These are some of the voices progressing the industry, academia, and our ecosystem together at CAAM. This is a starting point for a conversation. We really invite our audience and the listeners here today, reach out, connect with CAAM, connect with our members. This is an opportunity to raise the bar for the ecosystem overall. We have our next event coming up on November 18th for our Indigenous Uplift Wisdom Session. Please take a look at our website to find all the registration details. And overall, to give a concluding voice, this new industry needs your insight and your perspective. We know that innovation alone doesn't build a better world. It takes the collaboration from all the voices, and that's what we started here today. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter, or reach out to us via email. We are here at CAAM to make sure that the advanced air mobility ecosystem continues that education awareness across the country. From all of us here today, thank you so much again for your time and effort. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend coming up. Greatly appreciate it. Take care.